Lilac lemon shortbread cookies are another use for my lilac sugar that I like to make. You can see the link below if you want to learn how to make it yourself. If you wanted to, you could just use regular sugar, but the lilacs add so much to this. I begin with 1 cup of lilac sugar. You can see the edible lilac petals in there. It's so much fun. I'll then add 14 tablespoons of butter. This needs to be pre-softened. And then I'll mix it in with my lilac sugar. I really like using the different edible flowers around us because, well, I don't know, it's just kind of fun. You know, it's pretty, it smells good, it tastes good. In a lot of cases, like with the lilac, it's actually good for you. Now that that's creamed together well, I'll add 1 egg yolk and 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. I'll then mix those together as well. And then I'll add 1/2 teaspoon of lemon peel. This is a lot of what gives it that lemony flavor. I then add 1½ cups plus 2 tablespoons of flour. 1/2 cup of arrowroot powder. If you don't have arrowroot, you can always just use cornstarch. And 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then I'll mix that all together. I then switch to just my hands and I'll press it all together because it can feel kind of crumbly, but trust me, it'll go together well. I'll then place this in the refrigerator and let it chill for 30 minutes. Now that my dough is nice and cooled, I'll roll it out and I want it to be somewhere around 3/8 of an inch thick. The more even and level it is, the better it looks with this cookie because it doesn't really rise. You can see how those little blossoms tend to show through. So pretty. I try to work kind of fast because I don't want to overwork this or it'll get really warm again. And then it's harder to work with. And I have a biscuit cutter that just does a round circle. You can do them any shape that you want, but this is what I prefer. I tend to go around the outside edge first because that gives me an idea of just how much room I have. And then I've found it's actually best to pull off the excess first because then it's out of the way and I can use my spatula to move the rest. Now that it's off the sides, I can gently go underneath and I'll transfer this to my lined baking sheet. Because I don't have to worry about these rising very much, it means that I can place them a little bit closer together. Then I'll roll my dough out and I'll cut it into more. I'll then place these in the oven and bake them at 350 degrees. I want to take them out when they just start to get a little bit of golden brown around the edges. So I'm a little bit disappointed because I got distracted while I was making the cookies. Don't get distracted. It really only takes like 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more to get to the right point. But I do think it's a good learning opportunity. So these cookies aren't burned, but they are overdone from where I want them to be. There's too much brown on the top here. Really what you want is just that tiny bit of brown on the edges. And so that's where you want it to be, not that. I'm sure my kids will still eat them, but just so you know. To make the frosting, I'll add 1½ cups of powdered sugar, 1 tablespoon of corn syrup, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1/16 teaspoon of salt. The salt is just kind of a flavor enhancer. You wouldn't think it would be a good thing to put into frosting, but that little amount is fine. I'll also add 2 tablespoons of water, and then I'll use my beaters to mix it in. Now I'll place the glaze in a sandwich bag because it makes it a little bit easier to put on. The best way I've found to put it in the bag is actually to put it inside a jar, to have the lip folded over and put that over the top. And then I can lift up my bowl and use my spatula. If your bag starts to slip, you can always put the bowl right against the edge or you can rubber band it on. So now I'll seal that up and I'll want to get as much of the air out as I can. I really like using a bag to put the glaze on. You could also do some kind of a frosting bag, but I always have sandwich bags on hand. And then I just cut a somewhat small hole in the end, just enough to be able to squeeze, I don't know, it's maybe 1/4 inch. And then I squeeze on my glaze in a spiral. I'll then go through and add some little candied lilacs to the cookies. I need to add these before the frosting dries because if I don't, I won't be able to get it on. Okay, so with the taste tester, so it's just kind of this fun, slightly floral, slightly lemony shortbread.